estimates. So I think, like I said, overall we should be about 40% lower than what estimates we had given in the latest budget. So instead of throwing such a figure, 20 lakh crore figure, which soon people realized was only a derived figure and actual dole out by the government was possibly about 1% of the GDP, it has created a lot of resentment among the business and the middle class. Only a few, in fact, have been vocal about it. And again, basically, nobody would like to be fooled, especially at times like these. Now, coming to the jobless numbers, I mean, there are figures floating around the market that about 12 crore people would be jobless. But I think that's only temporary, because I think this also includes those people who are sitting at home, possibly not doing anything, waiting for the employers to call them back. But the silver lining now is that I believe the recruitments have started. This is what a couple of the HR agencies have been talking about. For the industry, I think the cost gap between the contract labor and the permanent workers will reduce, as most of the permanent staff would be taking a salary or a wage cut. Whereas because temporary workers may not be available, like, when we just discussed about the migrant labor, because of which I think the temporary workers' cost will move up. And even for all of us, I think we'll see that all the sundry jobs, I think the costs could move up because of, for example, non-availability of plumbers and electricians or household workers. So across, I think as far as these jobs are concerned, I think the costs would move up. The other worrying factor which I see is the license Raj. In the last 2 months, we have seen really a high on bureaucracy. But I hope the controls on businesses are removed as fast, because today we need passes for everything. I mean, we need passes to bring people to work. We require a pass to source packing material, a pass to get logistics providers in, and another pass to get the truck out to reach the customer. So I hope this is done away quickly, even in the red zones. Now, what has COVID-19 and the lockdown, what has it taught us as citizens and consumers? I think the first thing which is very clear is that our fundamental rights and liberties can't be taken taken for granted by us in future. I mean, in the past, fundamental rights and liberties were taken as given, but now this has taught us that this can't be taken for granted. And possibly the cost of living is not as expensive as we thought. It's basically the cost of lifestyle that's expensive, not the cost of living. And some of us need not be going to office to work. We can actually work from home. So these are a couple of things which have possibly learned in the recent past. Also, I think most of us may have changed our hygiene habits with cleaner surroundings and a hand sanitizer in our pocket. The face mask has become a part of our attire. Social distancing may continue, with many of us avoiding places which are generally crowded. We may prefer to watch movies at home than go to a theater. A restaurant may take a while to witness footfalls, whereas home deliveries, I think, could see a spike. Our buying habits will shift online much faster than what we have seen in the past. And as far as our traditions are concerned, even there, I think we'll be forced to break them. For example, social, sports, religious, and cultural events could actually take a backseat with limited headcount due to social distancing. The wedding ecosystem could actually take a hit, just like travel and tourism. Education, like all of us know, has partially moved online. Workplaces may actually see flexi working hours to reduce crowding on the transportation system. And all those pop and mom shops, which were nearly going out of business because of the malls and online, may actually come back into business, because we'll see lesser footfalls in malls and other places. The commercial space requirement may contract, whereas spaced out residential requirement, which is at least in the outer areas, could actually increase as decluttering gains space. Just for example, though bank branches were open through the lockdown, even the non-tech savvy ones have been forced to go online. So I think the next few years, we may see lesser number of physical branches for banks. This is just one example which I gave. And as consumers, we may actually delay discretionary spends, because money in the pocket would be less across, because a number of people would have lost their jobs, a number of people would have seen salary cuts. And these discretionary spends would be less, especially for the high value discretionary. Whereas we could actually see a surge on the lower unit cost discretionary because we have not been, we have not been able to spend on that in the last 2 to 2.5 months. So as soon as the shops open up, we could actually see some sort of a surge, but again, where the unit cost could be lower. Now, coming to the question of where do we see the markets go from here on? See, the world's leading economies, other than China, could actually be seeing a recession for some time to come. But fortunately for us, India continues to be a domestic consumption economy. Before this coronavirus issue, global buyers, especially US-based ones, were looking to de-risk their supply chains out of China because of the trade war issue. But now, post this COVID outbreak, we may see this gathering pace as many countries, especially those who have been worst affected by this virus, would look at China as a perpetrator. Though it may not be possible to move immediately out of China due to the strategic position which it has as a global supplier. But I think the shift could definitely commence. And possibly India could be among the major beneficiaries of the shift. But people do question our land and labor laws, saying that that's a deterrent. Others talk about our labor efficiency or inefficiency, I would say, and policy stability. However, in the past, we have seen how IT and auto industry has actually fared and grown over the last 3 decades. Pharma sector, I think we are clearly the manufacturers for the world. I think that's again been proven. And that's been there for the last 2 decades and more. And each of these are well oiled, especially the auto sector, where I think we have one of the best supply chains. So if we get down to it, I think we can always do it. We are today, in fact, the second largest in mobile phone assembly. So I'm not really talking of heavy industries shifting out of China, but it's the lighter ones, especially in engineering, specialty chemicals, where I think we have already made a mark. There's another major sector which is moving out of China, which I'm personally aware of because I'm associated with that, is the 70 billion toy market. And that's slowly shifting to India from China. Like this, I think there could be many others which may want to shift out. But I think it will be a slow move, no doubt. But I think it will be a sure move out. Now, I mean, every difficult situation, a slowdown or a recession ensures that industry becomes more efficient. And this efficiency, in fact, lasts much longer, again, through the boom period. But because of a global recession, we may actually also see the commodity prices also coming down. So those who survive this will be able to effectively cut operating costs and improve margins in the medium to longer run. Though we may see flat demand domestically, but if shift from China, like what we are discussing, becomes a reality, we could see export sales moving up sharply. Secondly, shifting of facilities to India would also mean capex and fresh employment opportunities. Although this may not be immediate, we may start taking baby steps towards that. And finally, I mean, what does the market look for? Are we getting worse or is it getting better? So when the pandemic started, it was the fear of the unknown. You didn't know how many people would get affected, how many deaths would you see, and more importantly, how long the industry would be shut. Unlike the earlier shocks, this one, no one really had an effective remedy, and every other country had faced the brunt. Thus, the markets crashed in panic, as if there's no tomorrow. At least now, we have some sort of visibility, though the path ahead may not be smooth. We are now coming to terms with COVID-19, and we are decently sure that we may have to coexist. Hopefully, a vaccine or remedy may be discovered, though I think on an everyday basis, we get some news or the other about the discovery. So the way I see it is, I think the worst seems behind us. Unless, of course, the caveat is, unless, of course, we have a bigger second wave leading to a possibly another shutdown. And anyway, analysts have written off quarter 1 of FY21, even quarter 2 will go possibly into coming back on stream. Thus, I think only quarter three we have chances of seeing some green shoots, and this is more or less discounted by the markets as of now. Then opening up of the industry will have its share of problems. You'll have social distancing, supply chain issues, availability of labor may not be there like what we discussed. Working capital issues will be at the forefront because your debtors will not be paying you, whereas your creditors will be standing at the door. And again, because of creditors, it is linked to your supply chain, so you'll have to pay them. So all this, I think, will ensure that you'll be forced to have low capacity utilization. In some sectors, such as essentials and consumers, we may see production being utilized to fill up the inventory, which has been pared down in the last 2.5 months. Now, coming to the so-called stimulus package, I think the government and regulators have done their bit to ensure a soft landing. Many of us may argue that it's not enough. I think that is more from the point of view of what was promised and what was delivered. But I see them more as a facilitator for the industry than one who could have doled out money, because there's no money in the first place. And from the market's point of view, I think a very important decision which was taken, which we have not really appreciated, was to keep the markets open. I mean, just imagine what would have happened if the stock markets were shut because of this. RBI has done its bit of ensuring availability of liquidity, lowering of rates. However, the issue, I think, is more at the ground level. The question is, will the banks pass on the liquidity to the industry? In the case of SMEs, at least the government has ensured that it's via automatic route, so the banks don't have to do anything. As long as it's a standard account, they are topped up with the working capital and they get the moratorium. So I think the finance minister may need to intervene to ensure that the marginal accounts get the necessary funding from the banks to ensure that they don't slip into becoming substandard. Now, fortunately, our rural economy seems to be the least affected. Most of the green zones were from the rural economy. And now with the bumper harvest and the easing of the APMC rules to facilitate farmers to sell to anyone without really going through the APMC route, I think that's one of the major steps taken to improve the earnings of the farmers. And now with the normal monsoon expected, government grants and ready labor availability, I think should really bode well for the sector. And frankly, I think our rural economy could drive our consumption revival. And we have, in the last 2-3 months, we have seen some of the stocks cracking nearly 50%. And I see this possibly as once in a lifetime opportunity to pick up good names when these FIs are exiting. Because finally, the global investors have to come back to an economy which continues to grow. One of the sectors which the government will continue to spend, where it has promised to spend about 5 lakh crores. This promise had come last year, and I think by December they had already announced 1 lakh crore of investment. So that is infrastructure, due to which we could see a number of ancillary sectors possibly hanging along, like cement, steel, in automobiles, basically HCV, LCV. And I think this is what could actually kickstart the economy. Talking about the other sectors, I think pharma has got a new lease of life with the softer US FDA norms. We may see personal transportation coming back in vogue, which could mean two-wheelers and possibly the entry-level cars. And there could be a spurt in demand for white goods. I mean, especially washing machines, dishwashers, your refrigerators, ACs to a certain extent. Export-oriented businesses, again, like I said, may see renewed vigor, whether it's engineering or home textiles. People may actually look to move out of high-density localities, and we could see cities going through a makeover, especially the slum pockets. So it could be an opportunity for the real estate sector also, which has been going through tough times for the last 4 or 5 years. Finally, I would say that in times like these, investor psychology really plays a major role. I mean, those who bought at higher levels and lost didn't really have the courage to invest at lower levels, although they had liquidity. And those who did invest through this panic and waited, I think possibly did the right thing. But unfortunately, I think quite a few of them continue to wait for lower levels and don't want to buy when the market has bounced back. So nobody knows as to where the bottom is. However, we seem to be staring at an opportunity. Remember that in any situation, Indian businessmen are jugadus. We'll come out of this, and that too, I think, will come out well. So, in this emergence of new India, I think we need to be invested to gain from it. So, with this, I open the house for questions.
Thank you so much, Ambareesh, and it's always lovely to hear you out. I have been listening to you for last, I think, more than 10 years now, maybe 15 years now, and it's my pleasure and privilege to have a one-to-one conversation with you today.
My pleasure.
You mentioned oil prices are falling, and that's the only probably the green signal we have in the Indian economy.
Right.
With the oil prices falling, so what do you think, which sectors actually will benefit? So I feel paints or any related sectors will also benefit. Should the investors start looking at paint stocks like Asian Paints or Berger Paints?
Yeah, I think one should look at it, but let me tell you that the immediate demand for paints may not be too high, because that's again one of those discretionary spends, and decently large discretionary spends. I mean, first of all, the real estate sector is anyway in doldrums, and I mean, those who would have possibly gone in for a home makeover would have been one of the consumers for all this. And what I would say is those who had planned a home makeover may actually delay it.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, to get the labor for the home makeover, whether it's a painter or whether it's a plumber or any of those mistries, I think it's difficult to get those guys at least for the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you want to do a home makeover, you will not be able to do it. So I think the next 2 quarters could be a bit tough, but then I would see that as an opportunity, because in case those stocks fall, for example, again, although I said I will not discuss stock specific, let me give you an example. Asian Paints. I mean,
Sure.
there was a sell report after a very long time by some of the major brokerage houses, especially the foreign brokerage houses, because of which the stock fell. I mean, that gives you an opportunity to pick up at lower levels, because these stocks are not meant for, 4-month or 6-month hold. These are stocks to be held on for 3-5 years plus.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we can also open the house for the audience for the question. So Valentina has a question. Manan, can you please unmute Valentina? She can ask her question.
Sure.
Valentina, please ask your question. Okay. So she has posted her question. So is it a good time to enter the market for a novice? I think she is the first timer in the stock market. Since the stock market is down, everyone is talking about that.
Yeah.
And then she's asking a follow-up questions. If yes, then which sector she should start with? And she's the first timer.
Well, see, as a first timer, I would surely suggest that you should go in for mutual funds than enter the stock markets directly, because that will give you a much better representation of the market than picking up a couple of stocks. And in those mutual funds, I would suggest that you try to pick up the ones which do not have too high a weightage on the NBFC sector. Because the way I see is NBFCs could really face tough times over the next at least foreseeable 3 to 4 quarters. So look for the mutual funds which are possibly having the large cap stocks, but a lower weightage on NBFCs.
And you also mentioned the staff won't be available. So, for example, the plumbers or the masons, these people won't be available. But if there is a demand for the staff, the resources, then staffing companies, the companies like Teamlease, Quest Corp, do you think these companies will actually benefit because of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think they will benefit for sure, because they would have a much better way to source these people and put them on the job. But then overall, for the consumer, the cost will go up.
Okay. And what about, there's a ongoing debate, OTT versus cinema now, and PVR also announced yesterday, Warburg Pincus and multiples are putting in money. So
Right.
these companies like cinema, PVR, Inox, Eros, so versus they have now a release on OTT platform directly.
Right.
So should investors actually look at the media and entertainment companies, or should also stay away?
Now the question is whether these companies will go out of business. I don't think so. Should you invest now? Again, I would say I don't think so, because I think they will be the last in the queue to possibly come back on stream. Even if they're allowed to be open, I think they'll be the last to be allowed to be open, and I think the earliest would be possibly by September.
Okay.
Late August, September. And even after they have been allowed to be open, how many people would have the courage to go and sit in a closed auditorium?
Yes.
For 2.5, 3 hours.
Yes.
Number two, I mean, most of the ready stock or near ready stock is coming on OTT. And I mean, since there's been no shooting for movies or serials over the last 2.5 months, I don't think there'll be enough inventory to come out for exhibition when these people open for business. So I think the earliest they may see some business coming in would possibly be post Diwali or possibly January onwards. But again, the question is, I mean, what would be the capacity utilization?
Yeah.
So from that point of view, it doesn't seem to be a good investment at this point of time. But yes, I mean, that's one segment where the business will continue, no doubt.
Sure. Madam, can you unmute Vaibhav Methi? He's a question.
Yeah.
Vaibhav, hi. Welcome. Please ask your question.
Arun, thanks. Hi, Ambareesh.
Hi, Vaibhav.
Just a quick thing. So gold has been the safest haven for the last few months, and it has risen to newer levels. So will it continue to be rising for the few months, and what's the trend that you are seeing here?
See, on gold, I have a slightly different opinion than what is there in the market. I think market still expects gold prices to move up. I mean, I have a slightly different opinion. Like I said, I think it's already moved up decently well. I mean, it was at the levels of about 30 to 34,000 a couple of months back, and from there we've already seen 46,000 plus as far as India is concerned. Going ahead, once the economy opens up, people are allowed to come out. I think we could see a lot of retail sale of gold, because people have used up their savings, their earnings during this pandemic, and people are in fact running out of money. I'm talking of those at the lower end of the strata. So there could be a decent amount of selling coming in from that segment. And at the same time, one of the largest buyers in the world is India, as far as consumption is concerned of gold. And I mean, that would be under discretionary spend, and that too high-end discretionary spend. I think there'll be a lot of slowdown there, because people may not really look to buy gold even for the next 5-6 months or maybe more. So the gold demand from that point of view would be lower. And once we see the industry and the economy slowly bouncing back across the globe, and the fear of this pandemic really going down, for example, if we have a vaccine or a medicine or a cure found quite fast, I think that would be the day you will see gold really falling. So from that point of view, I would say that gold may not be a good investment at this point of time, and it is fresh investment. And if one is holding gold since the last couple of years, this possibly could be a good opportunity to book some profits.
Just one more thing, if I may, Arun.
Yes, please, Vaibhav. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. One more question which I had in my mind was regarding the state of our banking system. So obviously there will be a lot of stress on the banks given the rising level of NPS which they might witness because of some of the companies that they have loaned out to.
Right.
So do you see that stress reaching out of proportion, or what's your take on that?
No, since there have been some change in regulations on how you look at NPAs, and because of the moratorium period, I don't think the stress would be huge. I mean, vis-a-vis the sort of valuations at which they are putting. I mean, see, when we look from the market point of view, we see whether I mean the issue is discounted or not. Now, most of the PSU banks have been falling for the last 2.5 years because of the NPA issues. And this pandemic may actually increase the NPA issues a bit more. But the stocks have already fallen. So I don't see so much of a stress on the stock prices for the PSU banks from these from this level onwards. Whereas I think the problem would be more on the NBFC side, where the valuations had gone to really very high levels in the recent past because of the sort of credit growth they had shown and the sort of returns they were giving to investors. But now, because of the situation we are in, I think the NPA hit would be more visible on the NBFC side, and this could really lead to re-rating, and because of which I think we could see the NBFC sector performing badly or underperforming as compared to the PSU banks. And at the same time, what had happened, say, about 4 to 5 years back, that because of the issues the PSU banks were facing, the NPAs they had started facing at that point of time, because of which there was a vacuum created. And that vacuum was filled up by the NBFC space. And that's one of the reasons why they did so well. Now, possibly, the tables could turn.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Ambareesh.
Yeah. So Anmol Raina has a question. Anmol, you can ask your question now.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, what's the relation between, like, I was wondering about the relation between the 2008 crisis and the 2020 crisis. So I was wondering that in 2008, the actual market bottom in the US market was hit about 1 year to 18 months after the crisis unfolded. So do we also expect the same scenario this time, that the market bottom will hit 1.5 years from now, or like have we passed that bottom already?
I mean, although we say that every bear market, I mean, the story is the same, but the screenplay is different. But again, in this bear market as compared to 2008, the major difference is last time it was a financial crisis, this time it's a pandemic. Last time there could have been a solution by pumping in more money. This time, pumping in more money is not the only solution. We need to find a medical solution to it, which unfortunately is still not found. As far as India is concerned, 2008, we had a huge grey economy, which actually supported us as compared to the other global economies. What saved India at that point of time was more of the grey economy, which by rough estimates was close to about 40-50% of the regular economy. This time, unfortunately, that contribution could be extremely low. But the way things stand, like I said, I think we seem to be better off compared to the other nations. And from that point of view, I think our bounce back from here could in fact be faster than what you would see for the global markets.
Sure. Next question is asked by Vishnu Kumar. Vishnu, you can ask your question now. Yes, Vishnu, you
Hello.
may ask your question.
Hello. Hi, Amrish.
Hi, Vishnu, tell me.
So regarding the stock market, what I'm asking is, like, currently there is a problem from the demand side, right? The demand is completely hit. So now there are few sectors which might pick up after the pandemic is over, or it is on the verge of ending. So how can you say that which one will perish and which one can go up, and what are the broad parameters based on which we can judge that these are the parameters, so that we can see that if these stocks are falling under these parameters, then it can bounce back, or it will never bounce back?
No, you're talking of sectors or you're talking of companies? How do I identify a company or how do I identify a sector?
Broadly sectors, and then in the sector also, like if major sector, then which major companies that
Okay.
are there inside
Right.
that sector.
So when we talk of sectors, clearly we'll have to see as to which are the sectors which are the worst affected. And some of the sectors is clearly travel, tourism. You'll have the hotels, the restaurants, entertainment, which you just discussed, your theaters, and then those industries which are linked to weddings. I think the wedding industries would be shut at least for the next foreseeable future, maybe the next 9 to 12 months. So these are sectors which I think will do extremely poorly. But again, if one needs to look at the stocks within the sectors, I think you should look at those which have the staying power, which have enough cash on hand to see themselves through this difficult period. And when we look at the sectors which will do well, like I said, they see the consumption sector where it will be more of essentials, and the discretionary ones where the ticket size is much smaller. You may possibly spend, I'll just give you an example, you may just possibly, you won't mind spending, say, $2,000 or $5,000 on a discretionary spend as compared to buying something which is worth possibly 2 lakhs. So those, the specific sector or those companies which are selling discretionary goods of a lesser value, I think they would continue doing well because I think the demand would bounce back after there than the larger discretionary spends. For example, your gems and jewelry, I think that sector again is gone at least for a year plus.
So which means again, so something like Titan will not be the right choice for investors to.
Yeah, in fact, Titan may not be the right choice right now, but then I think that should be there on your radar. I mean, if you ask me, should I look at Titan as well as say TVZ? I would say, I mean, in a sector which is going through a difficult period, always look for the leader. So from that point of view, I would say look at Titan.
Okay. And so this also clears our mind that FMCG's story is still on for India, right? So HUL, ITC.
Absolutely. Despite all that Swadeshi stuff which is being talked about, there is no way you can replace a Maggi. I mean, whoever brings in whatever masala noodles,
yes.
I mean, there's nothing to beat Maggi.
I understand. I can see the love for Maggi for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next question is from Raghuvar Seth. I'm just gonna unmute. Raghuvar, you can ask your question now. Okay, I think we should move on to the next. Yeah, let's move on to the next. So Method has another question.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Ambareesh. So for all those insights, well, my question is related to the migrant who are shifting to the back to their rural or their native places. So the question here is, because they are shifting, they won't be coming back that easily because of all the post trauma that they have faced, all the plights they have faced. Is there any chance these large corporations will be shifting to these tier 3 cities or probably to the rural or urban, semi-urban areas, and a new dynamics will be set up. A new setup of businesses in those areas. And would this mean for budding entrepreneurs a new set of, a new ecosystem coming up?
See, if we are talking of setting up new factories in the hinterland, for example, the way UP is trying to attract because of the migrant labor which has come back home, they've changed the labor laws and they're trying to attract new industry. I think that is what could happen. Okay. Existing companies shifting just because of labor, I don't think that's possible. Mm-hmm. It is not feasible. Unless, of course, we see that, this carries on for the next couple of years, the next 2 or 3 years, we see that, labor is an issue, then possibly these industries could look to shift. They may not shift just because of the pandemic.
Okay.
But one thing for sure is that the cost of labor will move up.
Thank you, Ambareesh.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is from Subbarao Sunkara. Subbarao, you may ask your question now.
Hi, Ambareesh.
Hi, Subbarao.
Ambareesh, my question is like that, like a person who has like invested in a portfolio. So as per my understanding, one would invest in equity market, debt market, and might be in FDs. So what should be allocation on equity, debt, and the FD as per current scenario? And the equity also, like if you can give me the bifurcation on the large cap, mid cap, and the small cap, how much should be that as per current scenario? And might be if we have to change post the vaccine or the treatment has been discovered, should we change the allocation post that? So if you could help me with that.
See, typically the percentage allocation depends on the person concerned. So it's very difficult for someone to really point out that this is what you should be investing in. Even then, I'll give you a very, very broad sort of a figure. Typically, the investment in equity ranges between 40% to 60%, depending on how comfortable you are with equities and the other asset classes. Yeah. And say it is 40% equity, 60% other asset classes, basically fixed deposits, debt. You should also consider gold in that, in the balance 60%. Gold typically is 5 to 10%, more towards 5. At times, people who love gold possibly take it up to 10%. It could also have a bit of real estate. It could have a bit of other asset classes, including AIFs. Now, in times like these, when the market is giving you that opportunity, if you are possibly invested 40% in equity, I would say this is the time to shift from some other asset class, maybe from your debt or fixed deposits into equity, because I see this as once in a sort of a lifetime opportunity to buy stocks at lower levels. But you should clearly keep this in mind, that the amount you're investing in equity is something which you may not be able to withdraw in case of emergency, because in case the markets, see, although we feel and we predict that the market should improve from here, that's a forecast, but in case things don't work out, if the markets hold on at these levels, you may not really have the sort of liquidity which you're looking for. So you should keep in mind that this money you don't require at least for the next couple of years.
Okay. On the equity side, like large cap, mid cap, and the small cap.
And between the large cap and mid cap, see, if you are fully into it, doing your own studies, then you could possibly have a higher percentage of mid caps, and especially the stocks which you are tracking. Otherwise, again, I would say the large cap, mid cap, small cap ratio should be anywhere between 60% large caps, and large caps in the sense the blue chip funds, and 40% could be others, where small cap, which you are investing based on someone else's views or tips, I think that should not be more than 10%.
Okay, thank you, Ambareesh.
Yeah, so the next question is from Pankaj Talwar. I'm gonna unmute Pankaj. Pankaj, you can ask your question now. Okay, I think we should move on to the next question. Next question is from Sirisha. I have.
Is it audible?
Yeah, it's audible now.
Yeah. Hi,
We'll
Ambareesh,
wait
Pankaj here.
to finish his question first, and then we'll move on to your question then.
Sure. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, Pankaj, you may start first.
Right. Thanks. Hi, Amrish, Pankaj here. Since you've already discussed about the banking sector, my query is, since the moratorium period is on and probably a bank would be taking their stock of the assessment, how the things gonna move in probably next 1 quarter or probably a couple of quarters. So what do you think is the right time to further get into the banking stocks? As of now, have they touched their lower, or probably may see further downfall on the banking sector stocks particularly?
See, the way I see it is the PSU banks possibly have touched the lowest possible levels. But again, let me give you this caveat that no one really knows where the bottom is. But I mean, as of now, I think the PSU banking space, if you have enough patience of holding on for the next possibly 2 to 3 years, I think that's one space to look at. And again, like I said earlier, look at the top quality ones among the PSU banks, and one of them would be SBI, no doubt.
Okay. And Amrish, not only about the COVID-19 issue, what we are facing right now, if we need to relate this issue with the situation we had about PMC and the Yes Bank scenario in probably last 6 months.
Right.
So by combining both these issues, how do you think the private sector stocks would be this thing to get into things right now, or probably only PSU banks?
No, I mean, see, among the private sector, you have two types of banks: the top 4-5 banks, and the bottom rung of the private sector banks. The bottom rung, I think, you should just stay away for the time being, because we really don't know as to what is cooking out there. In fact, I mean, in the last couple of months, we have seen the way IndusInd Bank has fallen. I mean, no one could have expected a level of 400 for that stock, or below 400 for that stock, even about 4-5 months back. So I think as far as the private sector banks are concerned, the lower end of the names, I think, just stay out. The better ones, like, for example, HDFC or a Kotak or a ICICI Bank, possibly there could be some more downside from here. So I would suggest wait a while, but keep that on your radar to buy.
Right,
And
Amrish. Yep.
then possibly PSU banks, like I said, something like a SBI could be bought even at this point of time, because finally SBI is a barometer of the economy.
Right. Thanks, Amrish. Thanks.
Sirisha, you can ask your question now.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, sir. So we know that COVID as a health crisis has been the brunt of COVID has been much harsher on the US than in India. But we've seen the stock markets reacting differently, very differently in the two countries. Does the conservatism of the investors in India or the lack of confidence in the stimulus package provided by the Indian government, or any incentives as such, alone explain the difference, or are there any other factors that contribute to why we see so much difference?
No, I think the major factor was the FII selling, and the FII selling has been there right from day one, when we started. I mean, we were even thinking of a lockdown, or at least there was some sort of a talk on lockdown. So I think it was more due to FII selling than anything to do with the disappointment of the stimulus package. Stimulus package anyway was disappointing, especially after the call claims made earlier. But I don't think that is the only reason. The main reason was FII selling, and that continues.
Okay, I have another question. I think people like me would also be having a similar question. So some of us are going to the job market in the next year or so, and it's not always that we go through a financial crisis of this magnitude. So what macro trends or variables do you recommend that we pay explicit attention to as young business professionals?
No, can you just repeat the question again?
Yeah. So what macroeconomic trends or variables do you want us to pay special attention to, given that we're going to the job market and will probably
I
be.
believe Amrish Sirisha is a student, looks like, and I think she's applying to different organizations. So I think her question is which sector she should apply to. Is my understanding correct, Sirisha?
No, Varun. My question is what macroeconomic trends should we be paying special attention to that we don't usually get to notice in usual times, given that we are going through a financial crisis of a significant magnitude. What trends can we expect to see, and should we take special note of?
See, I mean, I don't know whether I'll be able to answer your question satisfactorily, but from a job market perspective, I think if you're talking of startups, I really don't know as to how well these startups will really get funded going ahead, because most of the startups which were funded, at least in the recent past, are all going through a very tough time, and I don't know as to how many of them will really last the next few months. Yeah. So when you're looking at a specific company or a job prospect, I think you should really see as to whether the company you're looking at, has deep pockets to ensure that the employees are taken care of in case, we have a relapse of this, and this relapse need not be in the next 2 or 3 months. Relapse can even, happen after 9 months or 12 months, because, like I said, I think we'll have to live with COVID for much longer than we earlier thought. So either look at possibly the prospect as to what sort of deep pockets the company has, or what are the sort of skill sets you can learn by joining the specific company.
Yeah.
How many questions can we take more? It's already 12:35. How much time do you have, Amrish, for more questions?
Yeah, the 5 minutes is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Manan, do we have more questions in line?
Yeah, so Promeet is in line, next in line. So I'll unmute Promeet to ask his question now.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Hey, hi, Ambareesh. Thank you for taking my question. So I had two questions. One was, I think you answered part of it, but how do you see the NPA scenario panning out for the banking sector over the next few quarters? While there have been moratoriums, but we see a lot of industries, not being able to get back on track, and as a result, a lot of SMEs not being able to play. So how do you see that playing out? And in context of the valuations, Indian banking, especially the private banks, have always historically had very high valuations compared to their global peers. So do you see a re-rating happening in that context?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I said that possibly one should wait a while to buy the private sector banks, because I see some amount of re-rating happening, and we could see some sort of a price correction there. So better to wait for the private sector banks. Whereas the PSU's banking space, I think that correction has already happened in the last couple of years, and now seems to be overdone. Now, as far as NPAs are concerned, yes, I think there'll be increase in NPAs, no doubt, and even the SME space. But thankfully, to some extent, that's also guaranteed by the government. So maybe the final NPA increase may not be as much as what possibly we are assuming as of now. But yes, like I rightly said, I think NPAs will see, at least a decent increase from the current levels. But like I said, to a large extent, market has already discounted that.
Sure. I had a follow-up question. So you touched upon the topic that APMCs, the farmers no longer have to go through the APMCs, and they're now free to sell to anybody, and that is really a landmark reform. So do you see any specific sectors or subsectors kind of benefiting from this move, and which can be capitalized on by investors like us?
What would the sector we should do well because of this possibly would be the warehousing sector, the cold chains, and including that would be the logistics sector, which I think will benefit because of the farmers bypassing the APMC.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, should we take up one last question?
Okay, so I guess every crisis has some opportunity available for new industries. So HIV 20, 30 years ago built the whole medical consumable industry. And I'm assuming COVID will also build some industry. So we have already seen gloves, masks, sanitizer, and various similar products coming up. And I see LV also came up with a mask with 15,000 rupees per mask. So people are trying to monetize.
One segment which will actually benefit is, the foods which give you immunity.
You mean the
Chyawanprash. I think Chyawanprash is going to sell like hell.
We should keep our eyes on Dabur now.
Dabur and Imami.
And probably Patanjali should come up with an IPO.
Yeah, Imami. I think Imami has a Zandu Chyawanprash.
Yeah. Okay. I thank every participant of this session, and my special thanks to Ambareesh for taking time out. I'm sure many participants would like to ask more questions, but we are pressed with the time. Ambareesh is always available on his Twitter. Please follow him, and you can definitely ask questions there. On this note, Ambareesh, I would like to thank again, and we'll be happy to host you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for hosting me. Thanks.